Click the like button if you want the Raiders to trade up for Jayden Daniels. There was a report that came from Mike Garafolo stating that the Las Vegas Raiders called the Washington Commanders to at least see what it's going to cost for the number 2 overall pick. What I'm saying, if the Raiders are willing to make that call, then everybody besides the name Max Crosby and Devontae Adams is on the table for a potential trade up in round 1 of the NFL Draft. Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Reds here, host of the Raiders Report, and today's show is sponsored by 8 Sleep. If you need to improve your sleep, go to 8sleep.com/chatsports. Kickstart the year fully charged, $200 off the pod cover by 8 Sleep. So coming up here on today's show, I got 5 Raiders that could be traded tomorrow. I'm putting this video out on Wednesday. We're talking about round 1 of the 2024 NFL Draft. Starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The Silver and Black, they have the 13th pick, which is going to be on Thursday, April 25th. So the reason why we're talking about this is because, to me, the Raiders trading up, the only way that this is going to happen is for a quarterback in round 1. Like, they're going to move up from 13, anything higher, to probably top 3. The only QB that they're willing to do that for is Jayden Daniels. Now, the Raiders might also try to trade back into round 1 to pick somebody like Michael Penix Jr. if he does start to slide down the board here a little bit. But I know when I do a show like this, people are going to freak out because some of the names I'm going to throw out there are names that nobody wants really the Raiders to get traded. But the point is this. If AP and Telesco literally told you on Monday that he's going to be aggressive, if the thing that they need to do to get aggressive is to move away from a player to get their franchise quarterback, the fact that they're willing to pick up the phone and call the Commanders at 2, even though Washington said they're not going to trade, tells me that the Raiders are at least trying to make the deal happen. So coming up here, I'm going to tell you the 5 Raiders that could be traded on Thursday. This week's schedule, if you do not know, we're going to be live for the entire NFL Draft, every single pick, and we're going to get started before the draft actually gets underway. 6:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time is when Jeremy Chuggs and I are going to be live. It's going to be a long, long 3 days. Tons of giveaways, tons of prizes. I don't want you to miss it. We're going to have a lot of fun here on the show. It is important to note, because every time I do a trade video, everyone's like, why does this guy want to trade away all of our good players? No, you're just not listening to what this show is. I don't want the Raiders to trade any of these guys, but if it means landing Jayden Daniels, I am on board. Let's go to the first name coming up here on the show, and it's Malcolm Koonce. And the reason I wanted to do this show is kind of to paint the picture of why would the Raiders trade this guy, what would it mean, and then how much would it cost, is what you're going to see for all 5 of these players here. So the only reason why the Raiders, to me, would trade a guy like Malcolm is if the Raiders are trying to move up for Jayden Daniels and the team that they're moving up with says, you know what, we need an edge rusher, and in today's day and age in the NFL, every single team could use an extra edge rusher. Koonce also has solid trade value, and he's in the last year of his deal, so if you're not really planning on giving him a contract extension, maybe you do consider moving on from Koonce before he becomes a free agent. I think it's also that you're confident in Tyree Wilson, that he's able to take that next step. I'm also a big believer on selling high. I think Koonce is going to have a good year this season for the Silver and Black. However, though, do I think that he's going to have 8 sacks in a 9-game stretch like he did the final 9 games of the Antonio Pierce? That I'm not 100% sure of. So what if right now Malcolm Koonce's highest value is right flipping now? Could be an opportunity. If the Raiders decided to move on from him, you would save $1.34 million. You would eat $249,000. And my projected trade value for Malcolm would probably be a 3rd to a 4th round pick, more just because he's an edge rusher. I would kind of lean a little bit closer to a 4th, though if a team really, really needed an edge, you might be able to get a 3rd round pick out of him. Before I show you the next 4 names here on my list, shout out to today's sponsor, 8 Sleep, and my sleeping schedule seems to always be a little bit up and down, but since I have found 8 Sleep, I'm telling you, not only me, Alex can attest to this. She's not easy to get out of bed. It's been a lot easier for her to roll out of bed. Shout out to today's sponsor, 8 Sleep, the high-tech solution to your age-old sleeping issues. 8 Sleep Pod 3 cover slips right over your mattress, bringing heating and cooling tech that brings you comfortable sleeping deeper for a better, more restful night. I love 8 Sleep because it has totally stopped my night sweats. I like to snuggle with my dog, Chuck, but my guy is really, really warm. Thanks to 8 Sleep, I don't wake up sweating and get a better night's sleep. In addition to keeping you at the perfect temperature all night, the pod also tracks your sleep and health metrics. On average, pod users see their sleep quality improve by 32% after just a month on the pod. The pod cover will improve your sleep by automatically adjusting your bed's temperature based on your individual needs. So if you wanted to be up to 110 degrees, you can do that. If you wanted your fiance to be down at 55 degrees, you could do that. Go to 8sleep.com/chatsports and get $200 off, plus free shipping on the pod cover by 8 Sleep. Invest in the rest you deserve with the 8 Sleep pod. And if anybody is wondering, hey, Mitch, how can I get that link? It's going to be available to you down in the comments and down in the description of today's show. Shout out to 8 Sleep for sponsoring the Raiders Report, because I don't know about you, I'm a much happier, more energetic person when I get a good night's sleep. And when you do a job like this and when you party on this show, you need to make sure that you got a good night's sleep. Let's go to the next name here on my list. It is Tyrie Wilson, another edge rusher. And if I'm the silver and black, I'm probably flip-flopping between both of these guys here. Like, to me, the only way that you're moving on from Tyree is if, again, it is almost like that cherry on top trying to move up to go get Jayden Daniels. Wilson should have some solid value after being drafted number 7 overall in the 2023 NFL draft. And, like, the other way that I would do this is if you wanted to extend Malcolm Koonce. So if AP, Tom Telesco, they're in a room and they go, we're going to extend Malcolm Koonce this offseason, or we believe Malcolm Koonce is the long-term plan for this organization, like that could be the extra reason to say, well, maybe we could trade Tyree. We weren't the team that ended up drafting him. And I am hoping that Wilson pans out. And Chugs and I are big advocates of saying, he's going to have a huge, huge season this year because he's a monster. He's been working really hard. He's been working with Max Crosby. We're hoping that pans out. However, though, this regime did not draft him, and if they don't believe in him, they believe in Malcolm, that could be a reason to throw in Wilson. The reason why you wouldn't do it is because of, well, how much money it's going to cost you. It is a dead cap hit, okay? Dead cap hit of $5.7 million. This year, you're also eating on top of that $11.4 million overall for his contract. I believe that you'd still be able to get a third or a fourth round pick for him, even though he is coming off a little bit of a down year. But I think people who really follow the Wilson situation know that the Raiders didn't want to have to play him all that much as a rookie. They were trying to rely on a little bit more in a dude like Chandler Jones. But you could see in the tape and the film that Wilson did get better year in and year out. The other reason why maybe you don't want to do this is if you're Las Vegas and you go, well, what if we want to keep Malcolm Koonce, but then also we want to see what Tyrie Wilson does on the interior, and depending on how well he does in the interior this season, could make a big difference of Adam Butler's a free agent, John Jenkins a free agent. We just keep Tyree Wilson on the interior. But this is part of the show because when we invented the show, it was around the idea of you just sitting down with your family, talking a little ball. You sitting down with your buddies at a bar, talking a little ball. Let's say you and your buddies are sitting down at a bar right now or at home with your family, and you got to pick one to trade. Who would you rather trade? Would you rather trade Malcolm Koonce or would you rather trade Tyree Wilson? Type MK for Malcolm Koonce. Type TW for Tyree Wilson. Let me know down below. Let's go to the next name coming up here on the show. It's Thayer Munford at offensive tackle. And I know some of you are going to be like, well, Mitch, offensive tackle is a big need. Why would we move on from Thayer? You're trying to trade Thayer so you don't have to trade Colton Miller, because left tackle, offensive tackle is a position of need for the New England Patriots and for the Washington Commanders. But to me, the only reason why the Raiders would trade away Thayer, or shit, even a guy like Colton if they had to get desperate enough, is because the Raiders are so confident in the offensive tackle depth in this draft, which, I'll say this, there are a lot of really good offensive linemen, both on the left side and on the right side, that you'd probably be able to get in the first 4 rounds of this year's draft and insert them as a potential starter right away. I'll also say that Munford, I don't know if he wants to play offensive guard. I talked to him this offseason, and he said that he wants to play offensive tackle. Telesco said that he might have to play both. What if Munford said, I'm not playing offensive guard? Could Telesco then potentially decide to move on from him, trade him, if he only wants to play on that outside position? I think the other part of this is because they don't know where exactly he's going to fit on the O-line, because they might view him a little bit more as a guard. If the Raiders decided to trade Munford, they would save $961,000 in 2024. They would only eat $49,000. My projected trade value for Munford probably be a 6th, 7th. I lean a little bit more to that 7th round because he was a 7th round pick. However, like, he has shown that he's worth more than a 7th rounder, at least as far as I'm concerned. I do want to throw this one in there as well because I did a video on Tuesday, and I threw out the idea, hey, if the Raiders picked up the phone and they called the Commanders for that number 2 overall pick, the name that I think would probably have to get involved is Kolton Miller. I don't want the Raiders to trade away Miller. He does have 2 years, though, left on his contract, $0 million guaranteed, and the biggest tackle or the biggest need outside of quarterback for Washington is left tackle. So that's why Kolton Miller, he's not top 5 because I don't want to move on from him, but he's definitely a name that should be on this list. Let's go to the next name here. It's Byron Young, and this is more of a, you're not really probably going to, you're probably not going to trade Byron Young if it means going up and getting one of your top quarterbacks, unless it's like for pick 4, for pick 3, maybe, right? To me, the Byron Young trade is a little bit more of if you're trying to move into the back end of round 1, maybe for a Michael Penix Jr. of sorts, and you need that cherry on top to one of those teams that wants to build a little bit more on that interior. The reason why I am confident the Raiders would be willing to trade Byron is because I'm telling you right now, I don't think he makes the 53-man roster. They signed Christian Wilkins, John Jenkins, and Adam Butler this offseason, and I do think that he would have some value because he is an Alabama product. He was drafted in the 3rd round. But considering the fact that the Raiders also signed Nesta Jade Silvera and, Marquand McCall to the future picks, that also tells me that that's somebody that they value. He was a healthy scratch a ton last year. Matthew Butler is another name that's going to be on there competing. But for Young, he did deal with a lot of injuries. But, the Raiders have already shown you the writing on the wall. He's buried on that depth chart. And if you could trade him for even a 7th-round pick at this current point, I think that you would almost have to do it because, again, the writing is on the wall, and I would rather get a 7th-round pick. Even if that 7th-round pick is in the 2025 NFL draft, I'd have that instead of taking a guy that I'm not 100% confident ends up making our final roster. Let's go to the final name here on the show, and it's going to be the one that is going to trigger the most people. It's Aidan O'Connell. If the Raiders draft Jayden Daniels or Michael Penix Jr. in round 1, I anticipate that that's going to be the quarterback that they plan on trying to roll with for this season. If you think Aidan is a legit starter, then why would he be a quarterback 3? Because Aidan is a lot better than a lot of QB3s in this league. To me, he's a reliable backup quarterback. But what you have to understand is the Raiders already gave Gardner Minshew really great backup quarterback money. $15 million guaranteed, 2-year at $25 million. This would just be a little bit more of quarterbacks can be traded. We see it every single offseason, and there will be teams that would be willing to take a chance on a kid that started 9 games last season. I don't want the Raiders to trade Aidan, but if we want to talk about overall value, I do think it makes a little bit of sense for the Raiders if they draft a quarterback in round 1 to think about the idea of trading Aidan O'Connell. Could you get what the Jets just got for Zach Wilson? I'd be willing to do that for a QB like Aidan. Here's my question to you, though, and I want you to be the GM. And anytime I talk about Aidan, this is where I kind of feel like I'm going back to the Derek Carr discussion. It's not to separate the nation. It is legitimately a question that everybody always weighs in on. Sure, it's the quarterback, and that's why it is. But, what do you think Aidan O'Connell is worth in a trade? Is he worth a 7th-round pick? Is he worth a 1st-round pick? Is he worth a 3rd or a 4th-round pick? I've put this poll out on social media. I put it on our YouTube channel multiple times. When I think about what Aidan O'Connell is worth in a trade, I'm saying at the absolute most the Raiders are going to get for him is a 6th-round pick. And you can say what you want about Aidan. Good kid, good quarterback, but I don't think a lot of NFL GMs or teams out there look at him and say, hey, that's a starter. They look at him as being a little bit more of a backup, and considering what the Jets just got for Zach Wilson is probably going to be very close to what you would probably get for Aidan. The Raiders would save $660K. You're going to eat a little bit of money, but maybe and just maybe there is a team out there that's willing to give you a 5th-rounder because they are really, really confident that Aidan can be that reliable backup quarterback in the NFL. So one more time here are the Raiders trade candidates in terms of these are players that I believe could be dealt on Thursday. You probably could put Kolton Miller on this list as well of players that if the Raiders need to either move up for a Jayden Daniels, they need to move up in the draft maybe to get a Penix in the back end of round 1. These are 5 names to just keep an eye on and saying, hey, We want this guy. Here's the cherry on top. Here's a little bit of sprinkles. Let's get this trade done. These are the 5 players. Hopefully you're tuning into our live draft coverage, again, with Jeremy Chuggs and I, Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.